Hey everyone. Thank you so much for joining today. We're going to be talking about peak prepped for our Unpack series. I am joined by so many amazing panelists that will introduce themselves, but today's episode is episode 2, and we're going to be again speaking about your pre-peak checklist. So in a second, all my lovely speakers, yeah, here they are. First off, I will be emceeing for the day. My name is Carly Dawdell. I manage the technology partnerships team. For those of you who aren't familiar with ShipBob, we help brands fulfill their orders. We help brands with D2C, B2B, and brands who are self-fulfilling through our WMS. And then I will hand it off to our next amazing speaker from Talent Pop.
Awesome. Appreciate it, Carly. Thank you for hosting this event. My name is Armin. I'm the co-founder of Talent Pop. We're a customer service management agency that supports e-commerce brands with recruiting, managing, onboarding great customer service agents for CX teams. So we've been at it for 4.5 years now, and I'm excited to be able to have this conversation with you all today.
Excited to have you. Thank you. Jeremy, I'll pass it off to you.
Carly, thank you, and amazing being here. My name is Jeremy Fenderson. I'm a Senior Director of Client Partnerships here at Ad Quadrant. We're D2C growth strategists that help brands navigate full funnel advertising, data-driven creative, really looking at AI and also advanced measurement. I want to say this will be my 10th peak season, so I'm going to come at you from a place of how to operate, how to tactically deliver, and super excited to hear from all the speakers today.
Amazing. Thank you, Jeremy. And then Jessica, last but not least.
Yes. Hi, everyone. I'm Jessica Schaap. I'm a Senior Specialist of Commerce Media at Tenuity. Tenuity is the largest independent brand performance marketing agency across the media such as Google, social, and commerce retailers. So sitting out of the commerce team, I am specializing in retailers such as Amazon, Walmart, Target, so many more. So excited to talk peak season.
Yeah, well, thank you all again for joining me. You all are experts in your field and super excited to hear what you have to say today. And just to get it started in the chat to make sure everyone knows how to use the chat, if you can just drop where you're calling in from today, just to get things started and kicked off. But with that, I will jump into our first round of questions. Awesome. So question I have to kick things off is, what metrics should brands look at to identify what has worked, and how do they identify how they should pivot this year? Ad Quadrant, if you want to kick us off, that would be great.
I think really we start off with focusing on kind of contribution margin. We want to understand, after all the costs, all the variable costs are taken out, how much revenue or dollars are left over, right? And then taking that and looking at your marketing investment, what your activities were you profitable? It's one thing to grow top line revenue, but at the end of the day, when you look back and you've acquired a number of customers through these peak seasons, were you profitable? And contribution margin is one of the things we look at. Then we'll also set benchmarks to say, what does ROAS need to look like? What does my CPA need to look like across all of my strategies, bucketing them against our new customer acquisition? So grabbing those new customers, but also thinking about existing customers, right? How do I get existing customers to convert? Again, what are those benchmark metrics? And then how do I win back customers who are no longer purchasing from us? So we're looking at our contribution margin, which is our profitability, tracking back to CPAs per tactic and strategy, and really thinking about holistically, how many customers are we acquiring and how many existing customers are we bringing back again? And then having a holistic view of that across the peak season.
Yeah, I like the how to win customers that didn't convert back. I think that's really interesting and smart to think about, especially when you're launching a lot of these campaigns. Targeting that customer base that maybe didn't convert is also really smart. And yeah, I think from the ShipBob side, like on the fulfillment side of things, we just make sure you're kind of, to what Jeremy's saying, like looking at your historical data from last year, leveraging that data to know exactly where to put your inventory. I think this is a big topic, or a big thing to think about. When it comes to inventory, you want it closest to your end customer, right? So you want to leverage that historical data that you have from last year to help you make educated decisions on where to place your inventory for this holiday. So if you saw, big spikes in last year on the West Coast, you want to make sure that you have inventory on the West Coast. And then honestly, just inventory spread out. Holiday is such a big time for everyone. You're getting so many new eyes on your products. So what I always tell brands is to think about, and a tip is just making sure when you're looking at your 3PL that they have multiple locations so you can really spread your inventory, to make sure that the order's getting to the end customer faster and not at a super expensive postage rate. I don't know about anyone else on this call. I promised myself I wouldn't do it this year, but I am notorious for being a last minute shopper. So I'm always looking at sites that I can get things in 3 days to 2 days or less. But curious to know, Tenuity, on your side, kind of tips and tricks or what you're really recommending for brands this year.
Yeah, definitely. To the point of taking last year's data and understanding what worked and what didn't work in the past, I think that's crucial for analyzing these tentpole moments. So with especially Amazon scaling up their Prime Big Deal Day, that typically happens in October. Each year it seems to get bigger and bigger. I think analyzing which of those two tentpole moments is the most crucial for your brand, that can vary quite a bit. Typically, as a rule of thumb, if you're not sure, if you maybe haven't participated in a holiday season before, typically we think of Turkey 5 and Black Friday, Cyber Monday as more of that giftables, more of the electronics. Those types of products typically do really well. Whereas maybe more on the CPG side, more on the individual buying, we would see Prime Big Deals Day in October take off. But along the same lines, people are always, consumers are shopping earlier and earlier, especially because of any fulfillment challenges that they may deal with or things like that. So we do see holiday season creep up each year and even start in October, and maybe next year it'll be September. Who knows? But I think developing the most informed plan based on historical actuals and what performed well in the past is crucial, especially across budgeting and advertising heading into the quarter. As we're preparing now in July, haven't even hit Prime Day yet. We're going to hit 2 other big tentpole events later in the year. Making sure that the budgeting and flighting is accurate in response to how you've performed historically. Some metrics that I like to look at here, average CPC is huge. So knowing when competition is going to be the most heightened, if you want to participate and compete in that, maybe you want to be more strategic and flex up on more of a little bit of an off season, or not off season, but off period. In comparison to some competitors would be huge. I think incrementality is a major factor as well. So what drives the most new to brand? Bidding on maybe those generic short tail type of keywords within the category. Purchase intent, like click-through rate and conversion rate, are really helpful. And then obviously you can't ignore the top line sales lift. So just understanding the fluctuations there and what's your North Star KPI across all of those.
Yeah, I love that. And I'm sure on the talent pop side, like what metrics brands should look at and identify what has worked is just probably response time.
Yeah, no, I think when it comes to, looking at it from a CX perspective, response time, resolution time, CSAT is really important to be able to capture. You want to be able to set kind of the foundation of what is going to be your response times during those peak seasons when you're going to be expecting more order volume. If you can anticipate any ticket drivers that are going to be coming in that maybe have happened historically, understanding what those ticket drivers are, making sure that you have the right resources for your CX teams to be able to handle those requests in a timely manner. You should also be looking at your social channels, making sure that you're responding to comments, especially when you're driving more traffic during those peak seasons. You want to make sure that those comments are being managed properly so that you can get more people to click through into the website. So I think those are some important things from a CX perspective, and it's all about planning in advance and educating your teams on what's to come for the peak season.
Cool. Yeah, I know we're going to get into that a bit more in tools and questions I have for you as well. But moving on to the next question, Tenuity, this one, I would love for you to tackle this one first, but the holiday season is hyper competitive time of year, right? We all know that. How can brands analyze the competition to make sure their campaigns actually stand out? And are there any tools you would recommend they leverage to collect those competitive insights?
Yeah, definitely. I think the first one, just on a baseline, is ensuring that the promotions that you're running are competitive, and that you're supporting them with full campaign coverage across all different campaign types, along with retailers. Leveraging the deal badging and having strong deals is super crucial for visibility during this time. Typically, I think there was a stat, I want to say it was an eMarketer stat, but I might be quoting this wrong, where about 20 to 30% is the sweet spot for what consumers are looking for discounts and promotions. So just knowing that and taking a pulse of potentially the competitive landscape and what your top competitors have ran in the past, making sure that you're competitive with that is very important. Utilizing ad types that allow you to drive toward deal pages and showcase deals accordingly is huge. So specifically, I know on Amazon, sponsored brand campaigns can direct to a deals page on the storefront where a shopper could see all of your deals in one place. So just being able to leverage that visibility is huge. The other thing on top of that, the third-party tools to gain more of an understanding of that competitive landscape, and especially historically what competitors have run before. There's so many out there, and I promise you the big competitors are using a multitude of these third-party tools. So I guess some free advertising, but I know Analytic Index, I know Stackline are big ones. So yeah, just understanding which competitive landscape or which competitive insights are the most important, and maybe which keywords competitors have bid on in the past, or maybe which keywords are a little bit more open, maybe that haven't had a ton of competitive volume that you could succeed in really quickly would be huge. And then not forgetting programmatic and display efforts with Amazon Marketing Cloud, alongside so many other benefits, as well as I know Walmart has been leveling up their programmatic offering as well. Being able to target audiences and amplify your deals that way outside of search alone is very important. So especially on Amazon, leveraging the custom audiences that you can target, people who have added to cart and maybe have not purchased just yet, or top keyword searchers on a branded or non-branded side, just to be able to stand out on third-party sites, alongside obviously the on-platform visibility too.
That makes total sense. Jeremy, anything you wanted to add to that?
Yeah, I think about it as being able to adapt to what's happening right now and creating a bit of an array of tools that give you that view, right? So you can go from looking at Google Trends to understand where your target audience is searching. I look at it as well as like getting into the peak season and knowing exactly who these top competitors are, right? It's one thing to say on one end of brand might say we have no competition, another end of brand might know who exactly their top 5 are. Once you know who your top 5 are, now we're getting tactical, we would say, how do we follow them in terms of what they're doing on Facebook Library? How do we follow them in terms of who's searching their brand now? There are native tools and functionalities within platforms like Google where you can see like what the competition is and where you sit in the auction now. I will put together a short list of all these different things, kind of like a doctor triaging a patient to say, here's my competitor, here's what they're doing right now in this peak season. If you have historic data, which is great, the snapshot from previous years, how did they do it last year? And then also say, all right, we're running a 15% off, they're running a 20% off, and building a mechanism to adapt to your competition because you might be too low. Your offer might not be good enough. Your AOV might be too low. So it's saying, who are my competitors? How can I get a snapshot of what they're doing across multiple channels? Because we're all going after the same audience. And then what mechanisms do I have to adapt to that, right? And then also backing that into, I'm always going to talk about profitability. What does that mean for the cohort that I'm going after, right? My new customers, how do I engage them? I should be saying something different to my existing customers, knowing that they're familiar with my brand, they bought from me, I have an amazing product, but my competitors are also advertising to them now. So how do I message it to them in a familiar language that allows them to convert as well? And then those that are on the fence again, that reactivation audience, how do I win that battlefield? So there's kind of like 3 battlefields, and you need to kind of duct tape together who your target competitors are and how to watch them and adapt in each of the peak seasons. And then save all your homework for next year.
I love that. Yeah. And Jessica, that stat's crazy. 20 to 30%, like for discounts. I mean, yeah, just, I think it's like echoing what you both said, like knowing what your competitors are doing, staying agile, being able to pivot. I think that really, of course, sets you up for success. And I'm curious on the Talent Pop side, like I know you all, have really strong customer support agents. When it comes to tools, like really what are they using to field all this, right? They're getting so many questions on every platform. I'm curious what tools you all recommend to kind of help with that organization piece.
Yeah, no, that's definitely a great thought. I think to kind of go back to the first point when it comes to promotion, I kind of have a contrarian thought on it. I feel that promotion is important, that you understand what competitors are doing, but not necessarily needing to match what the competitors are doing. I think, being creative and figuring out ways where you can drive more profitability through more incentive-based offers. I've seen more of a trend on that over the recent years for some of the larger brands that are out there. But diving back into your question, when it comes to, tools that our CX teams are using, it starts with having a really strong help desk. I think the top, help desks out there, the Gorgeouses of the world, being able to look at, some of the other help desks that exist, it does provide the ability for you to centralize communication from all channels, whether it's live chat, email, social media comments, and it allows you to be able to get back to your customers in a more timely manner. So making sure that, if you are an emerging brand, once you're getting enough, conversations coming in, you really do want to have a help desk in place where you can manage those conversations and, be able to get back to customers in a, good time frame, but also making sure that you can keep a history of those conversations so that if they do come back again, you can offer a more personalized experience.
Yeah, collecting that data is going to be super helpful, especially when you're launching all these campaigns. So my next question is really to all of you. What are some strategic goals brands should be planning for now to make sure their campaigns are meeting the expectations in Q4? Ad Quadrant, if you want to kick us off with this one.
I think it's really first starting with, like, what are you doing as a brand and as a business, right? Are you looking to increase market share and kind of take an initial loss, right? And then looking to back that into LTV into next year? Or are you looking to maximize the budget and the resources you have right now? So a contribution margin needs to be at 40%, right? Like, you need to first understand like what your North Star is. And then from there, you can move and build a strategy around that. I think you also need to look at last year's data, because there's one key thing that people deal with a lot, which is the drop off after peak season, right? It dries up after you've exhausted all of your promotions and things of that nature. So it's one, planning for what your North Star is, aligned with where your business is right now, and then making sure that it's not a flash in the pan. And then the next couple months we're suffering trying to claw our way back because we've exhausted our lists. So it's clarity on profitability. It's then clarity depending on where you are in measurement. You might just be looking at your contribution margin and how much you've invested and looking at the top line revenue. If you've taken the time prior to the peak season to understand that Facebook prospecting has a higher incrementality than brand search, or non-brand search has a higher incrementality, depending on your level of understanding with measurement, I would start to deploy those pieces too, right? And if you're looking to grow market share, looking at investing in strategies that have a higher incrementality, right? So it depends on your understanding of the data, being very clear on your North Star, and then being agile as you get into the season. And then using each tentpole moment to adapt to the next, right?
Yeah, I love that. Honestly, we'll be back here on another panel post Q4 in a couple of months. But Tenuity, would love to hear from you as well.
Totally. I definitely agree with Jeremy's points of just making sure that you know your number one North Star KPI. I think that's huge. It's so personal and so different from brand to brand. The other thing too that Jeremy hit on as well is the repeat purchase rate and the repeat purchase timeline and when that happens. So if you're more of a CPG brand, that maybe it's a 30-day, type of pack size or something like that they'll sustain, they'll re-up after that. You can target very differently than maybe someone who's selling something that you need a new product every 5-10 years, something like that. So understanding those time periods and what makes the most sense for your brand. I would recommend typically for these tentpole moments of getting more visibility ahead of time, setting the stage, improving organic rank, and layering kind of that baseline foundation ahead of these tentpole events where you can really activate on top of that and grow market share that way. Again, to Jeremy's point, if your goal is ROAS and more profitability, then maybe that would look a little bit different. But typically these events are geared toward new to brand, geared toward incrementality. So making sure that you can activate on that. I have seen some brands as well start with the new to brand push quite ahead of time, so then they can retarget and repeat purchase during these tentpole events. So that would be another tactic as well. And then similarly, another tactic there would be generating the new to brand purchasers during these tentpole moments over a holiday season, potentially even for a repeat purchase to then happen around New Year, New You, if maybe it's more of a better for you supplement type of brand. So yeah, quite a few different strategies and goals to be able to tailor your overall tactics toward. But I would say just being clear about those main KPIs and benchmarks of what you've done in the past, leveraging historical data for that, as well as competitive insights that we've been talking about.
And then Tenuity can help you with all this, right? Like everything you just laid out, if a brand's like, hey, I actually need help with this, like pre-planning, post-planning, that's something that you all can help with, correct?
Totally. We do it all year long. So yeah, we work with quite a breadth of different types of clients. Even I personally have worked with so many different types of categories, different sizes of clients. So super customizable across different types of products, different retailers that you might be selling on, different goals that you might have. So being able to get in with us and understand, or for us to understand your business goals and help to be a main partner in driving that business is something we do all the time, and have definitely developed quite a full funnel strategy for.
Got it. Amazing. And then, yeah, I would love to hear Talent Pop, your thoughts on this question as well.
Yeah, no, I mean, I think there was a lot of really great thought around kind of acquiring new customers, which, is a big part of, the holiday season. What I also thinking about is, how do we get those customers or your existing customers to come back during the holiday season as well? So I think, looking at retention related offers, maybe segmenting offers for specific cohorts of customers is something to be thinking about. I think in terms of a data perspective, I would want to understand on average, what percentage of our first-time customers come back, but also at what point in time do they typically come back? So making sure that you have the right campaigns in place at the right time is very, very important for you to maximize those opportunities. And I think being able to measure each of those metrics is also really important as you are looking towards driving, lifetime value. In an ever, changing environment, especially when it comes to paid advertising, costs are only going up. So you have to be doing more and more and more each year to be able to drive profitability, to get more of those first-time customers to come back, to make it meaningful for them to be long-term customers or viewers.
Love that. Awesome. Moving on. So as we know, increased peak season demands strain operational effectiveness. And when it comes to your supply chain, order volumes, and even staffing shortages, that's why now is really the time to start forecasting to make sure you have enough resources dedicated to your peak season performance. So this is a question for me, and it is kind of hard to ask yourself a question. But overall, as we know, forecasting demand is never 100% accurate, but there's a few tips I recommend for brands to get your estimates closer to your actuals. Inventory. One of the biggest challenges for growing e-commerce businesses is managing your increased order volume. I'm sure everyone on this call can relate to that, which is, of course, going to be most apparent during holiday. So using a warehouse management system will help you get accurate insights into your inventory, which really helps when it comes to forecasting for peak season. So really what I recommend is making sure you have a strong WMS, warehouse management system, in place. And so when it comes to staffing, it's obviously going to be really important to have conversations with your 3PL sooner than later about what are their Q4 plans. Or if you're self-fulfilling, just really asking yourself, are you staffed up for Q4? Are you ready for, Q3, Q4? It's really important, of course, to staff now to make sure that, who's working in your warehouse knows exactly how to pick and pack your orders, how to make a custom kitting order, anything like that. It's really important to start to put that baseline down now and those fundamentals. So when Q4 comes and hopefully you are, selling at high volumes, you've done the hard work before when it comes to staffing up. And then again, just having a conversation with your 3PL, having a call with your account manager. I'm sure you all are doing this, but it's a simple step that I think gets passed up a lot, is just asking your 3PL the questions. How are you operating during Q4? How does your customer support operate? What are the updated SLAs when it comes to our orders going out during peak season? Just asking those questions, make sure you have a doc that kind of answers all of that. We have a Q4 readiness checklist that we ask, we recommend brands have a conversation with their 3PL about. So if you have any questions about that, I'm happy to answer them. But when it comes to the future and looking at data points, I'm curious to know from a talent pop perspective, since you all are doing the customer support side, and that really starts to ramp up as people are thinking about what they're buying and asking questions about products. I'm curious what other future looking data points should brands start to consider in Q3 to prep them for Q4?
Yeah, I mean, for me, it's a combination of historic and future data points. I think from a historic, we like to go back to the previous year and understand what were the ticket volumes, during Q1, Q2, Q3, and Q4. What did the kind of deviations of volume look like? What were the ticket drivers that occurred during that period? Or were they externalities, or were they something that we can predict will happen in the current year? And then based on, that, being able to understand, what your staffing needs are, you should also be factoring in your growth rate, right? Last year, hopefully you're not, you're driving more revenue, you're driving more conversations that come in on an annual basis. So being able to factor in a growth rate allows you to understand and be able to forecast your headcount. And, in terms of the time of year, right now is probably the best time to start. If you get too close towards, peak season, then you gotta, be kind of scrambling to get people trained and ready to go. So starting early is really important. Having the right training in place is really important, and making sure that you have adequate team members that will be able to support that demand as things do come in. So growth rate and also looking at historics are very important in terms of making these decisions.
And when it comes to, staffing, and I know you just mentioned that, when it comes to talent pop reps, what do you see as the typical ramp time for a talent pop rep working with a brand?
Yeah, no, I think in terms of, our ability to get team members that are, flagged for a team, it takes us about 2 to 3 weeks to
Wow.
find the right talent. And then, another kind of 1 to 2 weeks of ramp up from there, where they'll go through our internal training, and then we'll get them really trained on the brands that they're going to be working on, understanding the product, understanding the policies, and then taking kind of a crawl before you walk, before you run approach to those new team members that come on board, getting them, to answer tickets that are just kind of answered preliminary before being sent to a customer, having a review process, and then ultimately getting them on email, and then getting them on more of the live channels after they feel comfortable with email. So that's kind of the ramp up period and the progression that we take with any agents that come on board.
That's a great timeline, and definitely want to call out. Yeah, brands should definitely start thinking about that now, as Q4 is around the corner. Awesome. Well, moving on to the next question. Now is the time to identify your deadlines, and there are so many to start thinking about. This can include holiday campaigns you plan to run, whether you participate in Amazon's Prime Big Deal Day versus the more traditional ones like Black Friday, Cyber Monday, as well as deadlines from your suppliers and carriers. When it comes to the ShipBob side, one thing we recommend is always building a shipping calculator, establishing those inventory and receiving and shipping cutoff dates with all your operational partners. This includes your fulfillment provider, your carriers. Each party will essentially have a different cutoff dates, and you want to make sure you're aware of these dates ahead of time. Put these dates into your shipping calendar and build in some padding for cutoff days to account for longer production and transportation lead times. We see our top brands do this and just how impactful it is. We always send out our cutoff times, but your manufacturer has different cutoff times. Your 3PL has different cutoff times. FedEx, UPS, they don't make it simple. So just staying organized with that, building out yourself that shipping calendar, we've just seen a lot of success with. But what other deadlines should brands be thinking about ahead of time? Tanudi, I know you had an interesting one with this, with just how close you all work with Amazon as well.
Totally. Amazon loves to keep us on our toes and loves to keep preparing for new events before the current one is even over. So working on Prime Day right now, that's next week. We already have deadlines for promotions for Prime Big Deals Day. I'm sure Turkey 5 will be right around the corner. So just making sure that you're adhering to those promotion deadlines to make sure that you get your deals in and submitted for those top spots and just top overall deals. I know top deal is a type of deal. So those along with other deals as well. And then the other thing that actually, as Carly were speaking, I started to think about launch dates. If you're planning on launching a new product, I would recommend starting at least a month before a tentpole period. I have seen brands launch products or launch a complete brand during a tentpole period. I think that was Blake Lively's brand a year or two ago. Would probably recommend a little bit of time for ramp up if you are not Blake Lively. So yeah, just taking that into consideration and understanding the competitive landscape and how difficult that may be to launch something completely new on one of these hyper competitive tentpole moments. Whereas if you give yourself a little bit of lead time and understand the ramp up period for a brand new product or a brand new product line potentially, that will definitely save you quite a bit of stress on the day of.
Yeah, Jeremy, curious from like the ad quadrant side as well, is like what you all typically recommend for deadlines and really, should brands be thinking ahead of time and what, you all recommend as well.
100%. I think I'll be a broken record, but it's always going to go back to profitability as like the bottom line. I see this green line. We always want to be green, this green line of profitability throughout all of our strategies. And we think about things and go through a forecasting exercise with all of our clients at the beginning of the year, right? Taking historic data and saying we don't always go up into the right, although it feels like that. But as we go through each quarter, we're building data and we have previous years' experience in terms of what that looks like. And we know there's going to be a spike in Q4, right? Based on that information, you all were talking about inventory previously. I think it's a major opportunity to make sure the advertisers know how many widgets we can sell or we run out of inventory, which is a great win, but we could have generated more profit and revenue if we're connected. So I think it's super important as a side note that both teams and all teams are connected to understand how much we have to move in order to plot that back. I then think about it in terms of what are the strategic goals you have from a profitability standpoint and those three buckets of audiences and tie that back to strategies, right? So if we go out for a minute and we maybe talk about TikTok shops for a second, right? You're going to want to get them a couple months before with product that you're going to sell during the tentpole moments. So they have it for unboxing. They can talk about the products and the benefits and how amazing it is with things and hooks like, I got my Christmas shopping done early, right? Like that needs to happen early. Then you get into making sure that you're building your prospecting and retargeting audiences maybe 30, 45 days out, if not further, so that you're getting those people familiar with the multiple touch points needed. And then I think the most core deadline is obviously your shipping deadline, right? They got to get the product. I always think about Mother's Day. I can't buy the product on Mother's Day because I can't give it to my mom. So you think about when they need to get the product so they can give it as a gift or they can receive it as well. Those are the types of things we back into. What are those early stage strategies that you need a lot of time for? You need to think ahead of, and how do you back that all the way into a shipping cutoff, a holiday cutoff, so that the customer has a product in time?
I hope someone steals that insight and they should talk to you after this about the TikToks of I got my holiday shopping done early. This is what I got. I will be subscribing to those TikToks. As I mentioned, I am the most last minute shopper. But no, I love that, what you all are doing on that front. And I think that's such a smart and creative way to think about it, especially preparing for all these crazy deadlines and for that, just getting ahead of it, like that makes total sense. Awesome. So to wrap it up, I have one final question. We've just talked about how to identify your upcoming holiday deadlines, but you also want to make sure both your internal teams and customers are aware of key dates. Once your calendar is put together, communicate those order deadlines with your customers, of course, so they aren't caught off guard and you're not losing out on those orders. That's something we recommend. And I know any agency, pretty much any provider out there will just say, have really clear communication on your website. What are the best ways to prepare your internal teams for the holiday season? Talent Pop, I'll really let you kick it off first, as this really relates to the CX team.
Yeah, I mean, I think there's a couple things to think about. A lot of times the CX team does work in its own silo for many brands. And I think that's not the best thing to do. I think you want to be able to be in a position where the CX team, the marketing team, the ops team, everyone is kind of working in unison. They're understanding what offers are coming out, when are they coming out, when are we going to be able to expect, peaks and valleys in our ticket volume. So being able to have that dynamic communication is really important. What we do here at Talent Pop is every morning we do a 15-minute stand-up to understand what's happening across all the different departments, making sure everyone is aware on, any focal points, any, campaigns that we're putting in place on our end, or anything that we need to be able to support a specific customer on. For the, D2C brands, you guys should be doing the same thing. Different departments should be understanding, hey, these are what our deadlines are. These are the things that we need to be putting in place in order to make sure that everything from, every kind of deliverable from every department gets met. And if those conversations are not happening in a meaningful manner and on a consistent manner, then you're not really setting up your brand for success. And you're going to be kind of scrambling at the finish line to figure out, hey, what do we need to do to get things live, rather than taking a prepared and methodical approach.
Yeah, that's so important. And then Jeremy, I'm curious from your perspective, how are your teams preparing internally for the holiday season?
So we have this rather large, rather extensive checklist that's been built over the past, decade of what needs to happen in it. And it goes kind of similar to what Armand was saying. It goes by department, and it goes our side, it goes client side. And it's everything from making sure you have a backup credit card in place, to understanding what your promotions are going to be and when they launch, to having a coordinated calendar, making sure your pixels, if I could go into much detail. What I'm saying is we have a master list that we continue to build and crowdsource across all the brains on our teams and our client teams. And every single year we get together with project management and others, the client partners, and we go through that list and we say, what else do we need to add? What do we want to take off? What are the nightmares we had from last year that we want to avoid this year, right? Like, that list is robust and growing. And that's kind of the central brain for how we operate the holiday seasons. And it's been working pretty well so far. So we go down from tracking to our revenue and scaling triggers and what activates profitability, so we should scale into it. So what product sold last year, and how we should lean in this year, what creative work. It's all in a robust list, and it works really well to coordinate across all teams, because anybody can pull it up and say, where do I fit into this? Are we missing anything from my perspective? And then we just keep ongoing communication as we execute throughout the seasons.
Yeah. And then Jessica, I'm sure it's pretty similar, but we'd love to hear, how you guys are internally getting ready and using that strategy to help work with your brands as well.
Yeah, totally. I would say very similar type of strategy in terms of the lists, shared sheets. I feel like pretty basic that you would think, but some people miss it. Always having kind of that source of truth across different teams, whether that be internally, whether that be brand side, agency side, whatever that may be, making sure that there is that kind of central hub where you can have any of those deadlines listed. You can have any crucial moments or crucial pieces of information or goals held in one place is really important. The other thing that I would say is there's no department, there's no, type of person that might not fit into a call or might not, make sense on that call. We really tend to have quite cross-collaborative calls and communication so that anybody could be involved. Anybody that has a piece to play in the business is invited, which definitely helps quite a bit in terms of the collaboration and just being able to, even whether it is budget or whether it is fulfillment or things like that, just being able to share that information across different teams and different departments leads to quite a bit of success that we found.
I love that. Awesome. And to really round it all out, those are all the questions I have for you all today. If you wouldn't mind just dropping your email, we will send this recording out. But if you guys don't mind dropping your email in the chat for anyone that wants to reach out to you. And then last question I have for you, and putting you all on the spot, is kind of just curious to know, from your all's perspective, what's a brand that you are looking at it and you are saying, hey, that brand is crushing it, they're doing a really good job, or even a brand last holiday that you worked with that did a really good job? I think it's always just important to highlight those brands and check them out. So I will start with the Talent Pop side, if you don't mind.
Yeah, no, I'll give a couple brands that I think have done a great job across all fronts. True Classic has been a client that we've worked with for the last several years, and they are really buttoned up in terms of preparation, having the right team members on their team, making sure that they have the right marketing offerings in place. So they've done such a great job there. Another great brand, Jackson, a jewelry brand in Southern California. They've also done a great job of preparing and being overly prepared for peak season. So making sure that they had the right headcount, making sure they had the right teams in place, the right marketing offers. Those are two brands that kind of come to mind that I feel like are, best in class in the D2C space for these, BFCM opportunities.
I love both those brands, so checks out. From the Tenuity side, I'm curious to hear your thoughts or your brands.
Yeah, so many. Personally, I'm a little bit biased. I loved working with them so much. The Poppy team has been incredible. Poppy Prebiotic Soda, if anybody's aware of them, they've blown up recently. They're doing so well on the full funnel activations. They're constant hand raisers. They're ready for any betas that any of the marketplaces throw at them. They're activating on so many different retailers and really just getting the brand out there. They've done a really great job of leveraging an Amazon first strategy, which has been really helpful for them, alongside tracking both offline and in-store and online sales. They've found quite a few different betas and different ways to find success across all of these different tactics and capabilities, also taking advantage of MMMs, and yeah, just measurement solutions there, especially as Tenuity has rolled one out as well. So yeah, I think their collaboration, their willingness to test and learn has definitely set them up during these peak seasons, especially as theirs tends to be New Year, New You. So being able to be prepared for that within the Q4 time period is crucial.
Yeah, of course. And it's funny, I always don't think of them as like a holiday product, yet like I order them as gifts all the time. And I love when, they come out with holiday flavors, and I just think that's really smart. And then from the ad project side, take us home. What are your brands that you are keeping a close eye on that you think are doing a really good job?
I think one of the brands we work with is Teleties. They're a hair tie company that is really there to support their customers, and they're in boutique stores, they're on social, they're on Google. They're really creating an amazing product that people really love, and they're really leaning into deploying strategies that have been amazing and has really contributed to their success. And so for us, it goes back to what I said before, right? That growth part, right? We're looking for brands that are amazing from a product standpoint, from a customer standpoint, and have ambitious goals. And they're ones that we're keeping an eye on, we're working really well with. So yeah.
I love that. Yeah, for me, I think the Ninja Creamy. I don't know if anyone on this call has it, but I think they're just doing a really good job. I think they're crushing it on TikTok. I think that is going to be definitely a hot holiday product. And something I personally love and recommend for anyone on this call if you're thinking of giving a gift. It's really fun, and yeah, it's just a really cool brand, and I think they're doing a great job. But with that being said, I want to thank you all for taking the time today to share your expertise. We, of course, appreciate it so much. And again, please connect with these speakers. They are truly the experts in their field and can help your brand. And with that, thank you all so much. All right. Thank you.
Thanks,
Yeah.
everyone.
Bye, everyone.